Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It's Rockman Spectrum at you. I'm going to talk about I'll talk about the ending of one of this week's comics, as well as some other similar concepts. So, in this last issue of the final issue, I should say, of Extermination, which after almost a month finally came out, we learned that Cyclops is alive and well, which has kind of been was kind of a big thing in X-Men Blue, was the fact that, or the last few issues of X-Men Blue, was the fact that Cyclops was dead, and while all the other founding X-Men could speak to their modern selves, Cyclops could not. So, anyways, it's just it's been an interesting year for the X-Men when it comes to resurrections. Now let's start with the deaths, shall we? And this will be a timeline of comic book deaths and certain related real world events as well. So in 2004, Jean Grey died in New X-Men number 150, killed by Magneto, though it has been retconned to have not been Magneto, just someone pretending to be Magneto because Marvel didn't want to have Magneto be that bad as happened in that story arc. Anyway, fast forward 4 years, 2008. The MCU kicks off in earnest with Iron Man. The following year, Disney buys Marvel. Now, here's a little bit of speculation. Presumably, what Disney did after buying Marvel was look to the companies that owned the film rights to various other Marvel characters. Fox, who owns the film rights to the X-Men and Fantastic Four, and at that time also Daredevil, and presumably related characters. Sony, who owns the film rights to Spider-Man and related characters. Universal, who owns the rights to the Hulk and Namor, and I think there's a handful of others as well. Also, Sony had, at least I think, had the film rights to Ghost Rider. Oh, and of course Warner Brothers, who owned the film rights to Blade. Through various ways, they managed to get those film rights back, or some of those film rights back, and before recently. Anyway, but yeah, and like I said, that's speculation that they tried to get the film rights back in the first place. I presume it happened because it makes sense to say, "Hey, there's a truck full of money. If you give us the rights, you get that truck and the money." But hey, whatever. Anyways, so in 2012, Professor X dies during the Avengers vs. X-Men story. Not sure exactly which issue. Presumably, going over the story. Presumably either issue 11 or 12. 2 years after that, in 2014, Wolverine dies in the aptly titled Death of Wolverine. The story had been building since I believe the previous year, to where he sacrificed his healing factor to save the world from a from a virus, from a chemical weapon of some sort. That much I do remember. He then started to succumb to adamantium poisoning, and then had himself covered in molten adamantium after killing the professor from the weapon, who was in charge of the Weapon X program. In 2015, the final issue of Fantastic Four sees print. A year after that, 2016, Cyclops dies in Death of X, and the last issue of Uncanny X-Men, it stands. Now, 2018, this year, we get the return of Jean Grey in Phoenix Resurrection, which admittedly the ball started roll. No, actually, I think no. If I remember correctly, that was that either. Okay, I may be mistaken on that. Phoenix Resurrection was actually either last year or this year. But either way, if it was last year, it was late last year and probably and cover dated for this year. Professor X, though, to be fair, I'm not entirely buying that he's back. It seems, given the story, it seems a bit convenient. Wolverine has returned, though again, technically he came back last year in Marvel Legacy, though that was just a cameo. Fantastic Four has been restarted. Uncanny X-Men's been restarted. And, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Cyclops has returned. Now, another thing that happened this year, though again the ball got started rolling on this last year, Disney bought Fox, the company who owned the film rights on all of those returning properties, properties and characters. Almost seems like a coincidence, doesn't it? But yeah, basically, it does seem a bit coincidental that the same year Disney buys Fox, or when the ball gets started rolling on that, certain X-Men first, the four big deal dead X-Men suddenly return. Now, admittedly, Jean Grey has died and come back before. There are jokes that you've got the Jean Grey Award for returning for. There have been jokes about the Jean Grey Award for returning from the dead, so on and so forth. Wolverine, in all honesty, you could say he never really was gone on account of the fact of Old Man Logan, as well as X-23 having taken on the mantle of Wolverine. Cyclops, in all honesty, Cyclops' death was kind of a surprise, at least to me. It's kind of a, but at the same time, looking back from beyond, it's like, well, okay. They wanted to get rid of him. They were building towards. They gave him an almost heel turn, and after, rather than have him redeem himself, just had him die. Anyway, apparently his return will be addressed in Uncanny X-Men Annual #1, which I believe comes out this coming month. But it just seems oddly convenient that like I said, that all of this returns. Now, okay, Uncanny X-Men. That's kind of that's the gray area with it, because, well, while Uncanny X-Men ended, the X-Men were still X-Men books being put out. X-Men Blue, Gold, Red, all of which have now come to an end. Were being published in the absence of Uncanny X-Men, but Uncanny X-Men has always kind of been the flagship of X-Men. Well, maybe not always, but they're for most of its publication history, it's been the flagship X-Men book. There was a brief point during, I believe, when there were those who considered Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men to take the place of Uncanny as the flagship X-Men book, but it was hard for that to be a flagship book when it wasn't coming out on a regular basis. But at the same time, what was going on in Uncanny X-Men was just kind of a until after House of M. Then it kind of then we started to really see it go back into being the flagship book. And to be perfectly honest, I would say X-Men, the gold, blue, red era, X-Men Gold was probably the closest to being, to have taken the place of Uncanny X-Men. Whereas the last run of Uncanny X-Men was, in all honesty, more like X-Force, but I was almost called Uncanny X-Force, but that's an entirely different series. Yeah, just some quick thoughts. Like I said, I'm going to reiterate this as many times as possible throughout this video. It just seemed overly convenient, and you know what? Everyone's probably going to say, yeah, duh. Yet at the same time, we have no clear. Well, technically, the sale of Fox is not complete, so yeah. It'll probably be sometime after that, which supposedly that'll be all taken care of by this coming summer. So, figure sometime in the summer we'll finally get Marvel's plans. Say, okay, here's what we're gonna do with the X-Men and the Fantastic Four when it comes to the MCU and Deadpool. But anyway, so that's all I got for this. Actually going to be putting up a review of Aquaman here. It'll probably some point tomorrow. Probably a case of I'm going to write up my notes, sleep for a few hours, and then put the video up, or then shoot the video. So, anyways, as always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon in the description box down below. If you feel so inclined to send me a Christmas present, a one-time donation on my Patreon is always appreciated. Sorry about that. But anyway, this is Rock Box signing off, saying live long and rock hard.